Juneja, Assistant Professor, Vivekanand Institute of Professional Studies, have been granted with the opportunity to be the moderator for today's webinar on Reality of Defamation in Virtual Space, a Legal Perspective. Today, we have with us Advocate Akshat Gupta as a keynote speaker. Sir is a founding partner at Law Green and is a qualified legal professional and an alumnus of the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, Ranchi. He has extensive and in-depth experience of handling intricate, multifaceted litigation and also comes with management experience of handling human capital at prominent organizations. He is actively participating law, practicing law, espousing the cause of justice before the courts, tribunals, and various other forums in Delhi NCR. He is also widely engaged in various consulting assignments with a large number of corporates. He specializes in employment laws and cyber laws and was awarded Certificate of Merit by the Honorable Union Minister of Law and Justice, Government of India, for his academic excellence at Indian Law Institute. He was also awarded Certificate of Merit for his academic brilliance at IIM Ranchi. We welcome you, sir, for the webinar and look forward for a highly informative and intellectual session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Ritika, for such a lovely introduction. And thank you, Mr. Nitesh, for having me over today to speak on the topic, Reality of Defamation in Virtual Space, a Legal Perspective. During the course of my discussion today, are you able to see the presentation?
Yes,
okay.
sir. Yes.
Okay. So during the course of this discussion today, I'm largely going to confine myself to the Indian context. Also, as a caveat, I would like to say that law related to defamation in virtual space and related aspects of jurisdiction in the internet world, extent of liabilities of intermediaries, etc., is still evolving and is far from settled. However, I have made an attempt to discuss the approach adopted in courts in India thus far, which may not necessarily guide the future course of discussion. The fact that freedom of speech and expression is a fundamental right is a commonplace. It is guaranteed by Constitution of India to all the citizens. However, it has been held in various judgments from time to time that right to freedom of speech and expression can't be absolute, and there can always be reasonable restrictions put on your freedom of speech. One such restriction being defamation. That is, you cannot defame the other person. On the other hand, right to reputation of a person and his right to live with dignity has been held to be protected under the Article 21 of the Constitution of India. In fact, in the recent judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, in K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India, Honorable Justice Kaul, in concurring opinion, has gone on to say that an individual has a right to protect his or her reputation from being unfairly harmed. And such protection of reputation needs to exist not only against falsehood, but also certain truths. This was, however, in the context of right to privacy, but it certainly highlights the importance the courts in India have given to the reputation of a person. So, defamation, in simple terms, means making and publishing false statements against a person, which has the effect of lowering his reputation or character in the eyes of any other third person. In India, defamation is both a civil wrong as well as a criminal wrong. The criminal law on the topic is contained in sections 499 to 502 of the Indian Penal Code. However, defamation as a civil wrong is covered under the law of torts. It is purely based on precedential developments. The medium of internet has posed several challenges before legislators and jurists, such as aspects related to jurisdiction in virtual medium and the extent of liability of intermediaries. it will be better to explore the legal landscape with the help of an example. Consider, for instance, for fictional purposes, Mr. Motwani is a world-renowned billionaire based out of Delhi, having a global reputation. John is based out of the United States, and he uploads a video on his YouTube channel in which he allegedly makes defamatory statements against Mr. Motwani, which instantaneously and spontaneously becomes accessible worldwide through the medium of internet. What remedies does Mr. Motwani have? While the foremost interest of Mr. Motwani would be in getting the video blocked, removed, immediately by way of an interlocutory injunction from the appropriate court, while the matter subsequently goes to trial, he would also like to sue John for damages. He reports the video to YouTube and flags it inappropriate, and so do the friends of Mr. Motwani. But YouTube doesn't take any action. So Mr. Motwani consults a lawyer. The first question which comes to the mind is, where should Mr. Motwani sue? Mr. Motwani knows that free speech in the United States is very aggressively protected by the First Amendment. And suing John in the United States could be an expensive proposition with little chances of success. However, John could also take the defense that Mr. Motwani is a public figure, so he should be open to some criticism. So in the end, Mr. Motwani approaches the Delhi High Court by way of a civil suit for mandatory and permanent injunction along with damages, and impleads John as defendant number 1, YouTube LLC, United States as defendant number 2, and Google Inc. as defendant number 3 for displaying the link to defamatory video in its search results. He knows little about John's address or location within the United States of America. So he also seeks directions to YouTube LLC and Google Inc. to reveal all details about John through which he can be identified, such as his address, location, email address, etc. While in cases of defamation, the courts can safely assume jurisdiction if the defamatory content has been published within their jurisdiction and or read or viewed by people within its jurisdiction. This is where the courts usually apply the effects test. That is, the forum will exercise jurisdiction if it is shown that effects of the defendant's post are felt in the forum state. In other words, it must have resulted in some harm or injury to the plaintiff within the territory of the forum state. Effects test, when coupled with intentional targeting, can further give in personam jurisdiction to courts over the persons even outside its territorial jurisdiction and make them amenable to the injunctions of the forum court. Therefore, in order to bring jurisdiction to Delhi, where he resides, Mr. Motwani must show that the alleged video posted by John on his YouTube channel has been accessed and viewed in Delhi, commented upon, liked by people in Delhi, or people in Delhi being already the subscribers to John's YouTube channel. Therefore, they have viewed the video, hence causing injury to Mr. Motwani's reputation at Delhi. The latter case is likely to confer upon the Delhi High Court in personam jurisdiction over John, as in such a case, we may even say that the cause of action originated in Delhi, especially when knowledge can be attributed to John about the subscribers being from Delhi at his YouTube channel. While in the former case, the Delhi High Court may assume in personam jurisdiction after the service of summons, which is when knowledge can be attributed to John. Here I refer to the India TV case, Delhi High Court 2007, where the High Court of Delhi observed as under, and I quote, "Insofar as the position in this country is concerned, there is no long arm statute as such which deals with the jurisdiction as regards non-resident defendants. Thus, it would have to be seen whether the defendant's activities have a sufficient connection with the forum state in India, whether the cause of action arises out of defendant's activities within the forum state, and whether the exercise of jurisdiction would be reasonable, unquote. I quote again, I am in agreement with the proposition that the mere fact that a website is accessible in a particular place may not itself be sufficient for the courts of that place to exercise personal jurisdiction over the owners of the website. However, where the website is not merely passive, but it is interactive, permitting the browsers to not only access the contents thereof, but also subscribe to the services provided by the owners, operators, the position would be different. However, as noticed in the judgment in CyberCell Inc., even where a website is interactive, the level of interactivity would be relevant. And limited interactivity may also not be sufficient for the court to exercise jurisdiction, unquote. The India TV case was further affirmed in the Banyan Tree case 2009 by the Delhi High Court. The ability of Indian courts to pass injunctions against parties which are offshore or pass injunctions in foreign jurisdictions can't be doubted. The same was held to be possible in Suresh Jindal case, 1991 Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of India, however, did not go on to pass such an order on second thoughts, as it felt it couldn't ensure compliance of its directions in foreign jurisdictions. Enforceability of injunctions in jurisdictions abroad poses challenges of its own. In Sunil Jindal case, the Supreme Court of India noted that a film that was shot in India, in which petitioner had played some part in making the film possible, but the film was being exhibited only outside India. Though the Supreme Court wanted to pass a global injunction directing the defendants to give credit and acknowledgement to petitioner worldwide wherever the film is exhibited, however, the Supreme Court only limited its relief to instances where the film was exhibited in India on the TV or any other media. In another leading case of Modi Entertainment Network 2003 Supreme Court, the Honorable Supreme Court clarified that courts would be well within their jurisdiction to grant even the anti-suit injunctions, which will have impact in the foreign shore, as long as the parties before it were in persona. However, such power should be exercised sparingly and in exceptional circumstances to prevent any injustice. Quite recently, even in the case of Swami Ramdev 2009, Delhi High Court, in order dated 23rd October 2019, it was seen that Indian courts can give injunctions which have global effect. However, in that case, a distinction was made, and it was held that in case of uploads which take place from outside India, the unlawful act would be dissemination of such content in India, and thus in those cases, the intermediaries may resort to geo-blocking, that is, blocking access to defamatory content from India based on geography, instead of blocking the content completely from the global platform. Hence, Mr. Motwani at best can get injunction and damages against John, but will find it difficult to get it enforced in the United States. He could get injunction against YouTube LLC for blocking access to defamatory content when viewed from India, that is geo-blocking. He could at best further get injunction against Google Inc. to delete or omit or dereference such search results linking to defamatory content uploaded by John when the search is carried out from India. It is important to mention that views expressed by Delhi High Court in Swami Ramdev case were only prima facie in nature, as they were expressed at the stage of granting interlocutory injunction. In these circumstances, since Mr. Motwani enjoys a global reputation, it will become imperative for him to take steps to ensure that defamatory video is disabled at a global level and not just Indian level. Only option left with him is to get the injunction obtained at Delhi enforced in the United States. Hence, in other words, he can't really get a global effective remedy without passing through the test of US courts, which vehemently protect the First Amendment rights of John. Needless to say, Mr. Motwani will need to be very diligent and patient in his approach. Unless there are reciprocal arrangements for recognition of decrees entered between US and India, enforcement will be problematic. So now let's consider the next set of facts. As time goes by and life has its way, Mr. Motwani is on a long business trip to Canada, while John is on a long vacation to Delhi with his close friends. Now, Mr. Motwani over the time had become revengeful of John, and he always dreamed of defaming John. While in Canada, he remembers he had created a video making defamatory remarks against John, which is lying on his computer in Delhi. Totally unaware of the whereabouts of John, with the help of his accomplice at Delhi, he accesses his computer in Delhi from Canada by using a remote desktop access app, and he uploads the video which was lying on his computer situated at Delhi to his Facebook timeline and makes it visible to the entire world, as a result of which the defamatory content against John instantly becomes accessible worldwide. John and his friends, while in Delhi, they see the video. By this time, John's reputation has already been tarnished in the eyes of his friends. So now look at remedies available with John. While in Delhi, in India, the Code of Civil Procedure permits suits by friendly aliens, and they can just sue like the citizens of India. Applying the effects test, John invokes the jurisdiction of Delhi High Court and files a civil suit at the Delhi High Court for mandatory and permanent injunction, along with damages against Mr. Motwani. In this case, jurisdiction of Delhi High Court otherwise also cannot be disputed, as the computer resource from which defamatory content was uploaded was located in Delhi. And moreover, Mr. Motwani is subject to jurisdiction of Delhi, being the resident of Delhi. Mr. Motwani is not able to enter appearance as he is in Canada. John impleads Mr. Motwani as defendant number 1 and Facebook Inc. as defendant number 2. The court hears the arguments on interlocutory injunction. The Delhi High Court finds that the content is prima facie defamatory and passes interlocutory injunction against Facebook Inc. to block the defamatory content from being viewed worldwide. So I now refer to the Swami Ramdev case again. Now in Swami Ramdev case, Delhi High Court observed that as long as uploading takes place from India or the information data is located in India on a computer resource, Indian courts would have jurisdiction to pass global injunctions. While applying the same principles in Swami Ramdev case, Mr. Motwani, being a citizen of India, could only get a partial blocking order. But John, being an alien, got a global blocking order against Mr. Motwani from the same court, as the alleged defamatory content had been uploaded through a computer resource in India. Of course, this is a completely fictional set of facts, but it indeed highlights some tough questions which internet, as a truly global medium, poses in front of legislators and jurists. Needless to say that the crusaders of unrestricted global internet are always against any form of curbs put on the internet, as they want to keep it as a truly free medium where people can express their opinions instantly with a global audience without any hesitation. However, interests of domestic courts are always to balance the individual rights and dignity with free speech of others, which provides justification for global injunctions. While it is not in dispute, the position of intermediaries is well settled in law after the case of Shreya Singhal, 2015 Supreme Court. That is, in order to claim immunity under Section 79 of the IT Act, the intermediaries have to be merely passive. In other words, they have to simply obey the orders of the court and they can't deviate from their stand of being mere facilitators. They cannot apply their own mind whether the information should be or should not be blocked on a global level. And if such injunction is passed, they must comply with it in strict sense, which puts the intermediaries in jeopardy as varying free speech standards around the globe may expose the platforms or intermediaries to legal proceedings in other jurisdictions. On the other hand, platforms also enjoy the privilege of earning handsome advertisement revenue from the number of views which they get on sensational videos. Hence, not obeying global injunctions is also in a way beneficial for them because of the nature of the platform. It may be pointed out here in the subsequent case of Patanjali Ayurveda Limited and another, in a significant shift from the earlier position, very recently, wide order dated 1st June 2020, the Delhi High Court refused to pass global injunction order and instead ordered that the intermediaries block the content for Indian domain only. It was further observed that the judgment in Swami Ramdev case is a subject matter of intra-court appeal before the division bench. And the division bench, even though has not stayed the order, but has observed that no contempt proceedings shall be initiated against the intermediaries. So we will have to wait to see how the law develops further in this regard. To summarize the position, Internet as a truly global medium poses several challenges for jurists and legislators around the globe. And while the principles of law keep evolving from time to time, law is often found catching up with technology. While the recent shift in law around the globe has been towards global injunctions, the same is not going to go down in good taste with the propagandists of free internet. Moreover, the efficacy of such injunctions needs to be tested in near future. Thank you. And at the end, I would like to thank Swaroop George, advocate, Tanveer Singh from Vivekanand Institute of Professional Studies, Ms. Subha Angre from Amity Law School, Noida, for their undying research on the subject and assisting me. And special thanks to Dr. Amit George for his guidance. We can
we have the questions from the viewers and the participants? If they have any question, they can take up with the speaker. Any of the viewers, if they have any question, they can take up with the speaker. So I presume, Akshat, that your session went so well that everybody has understood the entire concept, so there is no question. But,
sir.
Yeah, Shobhit.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, Nitesh, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Shobhit.
Hello. Sir, thank you for such an innovative webinar. Sir, I just want to know from this webinar what we have learned, sir, in respect of the liabilities, sir, of defamation. So if somebody has uploaded something on the social media, and so is there any liability of person who likes and comment on it? Like same case that we are highlighted in Motwani versus, if somebody likes or comment also in that post.
So
I hope my question is clear, sir. Sorry if I...
Yes, I've heard your question.
Thank you, sir.
So it's a very good question, Shobhit. It's a very good question, and in fact, if the viewers are liking it, they are also expressing themselves. They are expressing their agreement with the content in a way.
Exactly. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, if they are commenting on the content and they are agreeing with it, or perhaps their comments are further defamatory, in that case, it's a very not an easy question to answer, But
Okay, sir.
From what I feel, see, if somebody has commented on it, and those comments can be classified as defamatory, then definitely an action can be brought against that person.
Okay,
However,
sir.
simply liking the video, I don't know, that will have a different impact in different jurisdictions. In very authoritative jurisdictions, even the liking the video may be termed as a defamation, or expression in a defamatory form. But otherwise, liking the video, I think, I think in a very balanced kind of a legal environment, or like we see, especially in US, I don't feel liking the video would attract any action.
So furthermore, sir, can I ask in respect of this further? Sir?
Yes, please show.
So sometimes we see in social media like Facebook and Twitter, like for example, Twitter, somebody has posted something which is for someone is bad, and somebody has liked the tweet or retweeted it. I hope I'm making my question clear, sir. Somebody has liked the tweet, and sometimes a person has retweeted the tweet. Is he the person who has liked and retweeted the tweet is also will fall into that, sir? Just for my knowledge, sir. Sir.
So the thing is, now if we look at Twitter, there's an option of retweet.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And when the person is retweeting it, in a way, we can say that he's also publishing it further. He's also making known to further, other people. So yes, retweeting can be classified as, he can be punished. The publisher of the defamatory content is also, liable, and he's also not intermediary, so he cannot enjoy that protection. Somebody who's retweeting. So
yes, sir.
Liking the tweet is a very difficult thing to classify, in my opinion, as a defamation.
Yes, sir.
But if you are retweeting it, then definitely you can also be held to be liable for defamation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the answer. Thank you, Nitesh.
So, Akshat, I here have a query. So, we are seeing a trend nowadays developing in the WhatsApp groups for writing against anyone and just hitting hard on them. So, how do you see that as an offense, or bring it that in the category of online defamation? Because people are mostly unaware about it, that how to take that as an offense, or how to sue that person that who is writing against them, being not knowing or just speaking out anything going out in the group.
So as we can see, internet is bringing different challenges every day. So internet is a very dynamic medium, with new apps coming every now and then, having new features, new ways of interacting with the content. So if we talk about WhatsApp, somebody must have initiated the content which is defamatory. He can be said to be the author of the content. And when that content is published, forwarded to other persons, now we have to see whether it is a personal conversation between two persons, or whether it is forwarded to a group. So if it is a personal talk, that might be protected, because it may not, because of the privacy issues, because of it is a private communication between two people, which of course the person who is getting defamed will not come to know about.
Exactly.
But if it is posted on a group, then the things can be different. Practically speaking, in a group there can be many members, and the defamatory content in that case reaches out to masses. So in that case, it could be termed as a defamation.
Okay, thank you for that. Ritika, I think there is one question posting up
yes,
there.
Sir. Yes, sir. There's a question from our participant, Mr. Vaibhav Mathur, and he asked that as the defamatory laws are different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and therefore passing of global disabling order would be contrary to the principle of comity of courts and would result in conflict of laws. So what are your opinions on this, sir?
In fact, Mr. Mathur, your point is very valid, and this was the line of argument which all the intermediaries and platforms even took in the Swami Ramdev case, and we still have to hear from the High Court because the inter-court appeal is pending on this issue. If we look at, if I share my personal opinion, then definitely the substantive law of defamation will have some variations across the jurisdictions. For instance, in US, the free speech is very aggressively protected. So in India, the standards may not be that high. So there will be definitely conflict of laws. And I don't think, global disabling order is the way forward. Personally speaking, I think that, there has to be a new mechanism which has to be developed. I mean, the jurists have to rise up to the occasion. And definitely global disabling orders will curb in a way freedom to speech and expression, because internet provides a free global medium. And we have to see how the law evolves further in this aspect as we go forward. It's a very valid point.
Any other questions from any of the participants? You will post your questions in the chat box, please.
If the questions are not coming up, I think there are no questions which are coming up. So I now to formally. Yes, Shobit, you want to ask something?
Yes, sir.
So I think Ritika, you can. Yes, Shobit, say quickly.
Okay, sir. Sir, my question is, sir, in respect to the judgment you have mentioned in Sir Suresh Jindal, 1991, that film was shot in India and exhibit, sir, I think. So, what is the new scenario, like latest scenario, current position, sir? Like.
So, see, that judgment, why we have quoted or spoken about that judgment is, in order to understand whether the courts in India can exercise jurisdiction over non-residents.
Yes, sir.
Over the people who are situated abroad.
Yes, sir.
And there is no specific long-arm statute in India which gives jurisdiction to courts over people who are outside the territory of India.
Okay, sir.
And even if courts themselves have felt at times that even if they pass such injunctions, making sure that the defendants comply with that is very difficult. So a court will abstain from passing an order which cannot be complied with. So that was the reasoning which was given by the Honorable Supreme Court back in 1991.
Yes.
I mean, after that, definitely there have been a lot of developments. And today we see, if there is a mutual treaty between two countries.
Yes, sir.
In that case, the enforcement of decrees may become easier. In the absence of a mutual treaty, the enforcement still remains a challenge. And especially in the context of cyber jurisdiction, all the countries have to come together, maybe perhaps to come up with a new level of cyber jurisdiction. Maybe perhaps we need separate courts for dealing with matters of such importance. But the point is that courts in India can actually exercise jurisdiction over people who are outside India, and that was the context in which this case was quoted. Even in the Swami Ramdev case, this case was quoted. So the power of the court, the inherent power of the court to exercise long-arm jurisdiction is not in question.
Okay, sir.
And that is the reason which was followed in Swami Ramdev case for passing a global disabling order.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Nitish. Thank you, sir.
So we have another question from one of our participants, and he asks, what are the charges costs, and do we have any insurance to indemnify virtual defamation?
Now, that is a very interesting question. I have not seen any kind of such insurance so far in my experience, but a good idea to the insurance companies.
Right. And we have
during this COVID-19.
Okay, Okay, so we have another question from Mr. Saurabh Bhardwaj, and he asks, foreign individual seek prosecution of someone in India for the criminal offense of defamation?
Yes, so thank you, Saurabh, for your question. I think the Criminal Procedure Code, you know, does deal with this aspects of jurisdiction related to such things, and I don't see why he cannot do that, because even in Indian courts, he can file a complaint before the magistrate. So I'm not very sure about it. I'll have to, check on this aspect. But yes, in my opinion, he can bring a criminal action against defamation against a person in India as well. I think so. It's possible.
Thank you so much, sir.
And coming back to this question of insurance, I think there has been some development for the journalists. The journalists who are there, perhaps there have been some defamation insurances which have come out, because they have to travel worldwide, and so there are chances of they have to exercise their free speech more openly than the general public. So I think insurance for defamation against if people file defamation cases against journalists, then journalists definitely can get some insurance, and it's a good proposition. Because yeah, I think they have to be protected because of their free speech.
Thank you, Akshat, for such answers on the queries raised by our viewers. Then I now request Ritika to formally thank our today's speaker, Mr. Akshat Gupta, for his wonderful session on this very interesting topic, which is still hiding somewhere.
We extend our heartfelt gratitude to you, sir, for giving us your valuable time and enlightening us on a very innovative topic. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to all the viewers who have remained with us in this short journey for this today's webinar. Thank you once again, Akshat, for your time, for giving us this wonderful topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.